This is the 217 Recovery Podcast, live from the 2023 UFAM Rally in Lansing, Michigan, with Marnie Winfield, Adam Stevens, Mitchell O'Brien, Justin Burke, me, Tyrone Hatcher, and your host, Corey Winfield.
All right, we are back again. Tyrone, this time delivering food. And we're at the UFAM Rally 2023 in Lansing, Michigan. Got hot dogs and chips everywhere, people everywhere. It's a beautiful day. And across from me is Joseph Sowmick.
Sowmick, yeah,
Joseph. And why don't you were with us last year, and you were a great guest. I loved talking with you last year. And you said, hey, man, I figured you want an update. So I said, yeah, grab a chair and grab a mic and let's go. So what's going on?
Well, you and your crew from 217, I know you've been doing this, and we're looking at the 6th annual here, but, the need is still out there. There are people in our community looking for resources, and, here it's kind of a one-stop shop, and, you and the guys have been able to go ahead and to give a platform, and when it comes down to it, a lot of people are connecting to you in cyberspace. I can even catch on Spotify, so it works out great.
Yeah, it's great. The podcast thing is kind of taken off, and just with people in general, it's what do you want to listen to? You can drive and listen, especially like I used to be a classic rock guy. There's only so many times I can hear Freebird. I can only hear Led Zeppelin, Good Times, Bad Times so many times. And you just want to hear some. At least I do. When I'm driving sometimes, I want to hear something that's inspiring, something that's inspirational sometimes. And, I'll go listen to podcasts. So I think people are kind of doing that more and more now. And, our guys over here, they wanted to start a podcast, and they came to me and they're like, hey, will you help us? That's absolutely. So they're kind of out here doing the thing too. And that's great, just giving other people a platform. And, yeah, not everybody likes our podcast, and that's fine. But there's other ones out there that maybe we can help. There's our friends of Lifeboat. There's just so many different ones you can listen to now, and it's great. It really is. And the people come up and, they want to be a part of it. And I think we try to represent having fun in recovery. I think that's what kind of crosses the line sometimes for people is they'll hear me and I'll just be going off on something. My wife, she reels me in as much as she can because she'll give me that look. You're married, right?
Oh, sure.
So
sure,
you ever get the look? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. I remember what the look is like, and I've been married for 38 years. But, some of those years when I was, in the dark and I was trying to work a program of relapse more than a program of recovery, and, basically turned it around, May 9th, 2009 for me. So I just went ahead and celebrated a sobriety birthday. And the beauty part, though, Corey, on what you guys from 217 do is you kind of go ahead and you keep an open mind to recovery, and you look at all of these different avenues that are open, and music's a part of it, and you got to reach people where they're at. And I think a lot of times with podcasts, people are like, well, we need to go to meetings, and certainly nothing wrong against meetings, but there's a lot of recovery in those other 23 hours when you're not at meetings, and that's where you guys come in with your podcast. You come in with those YouTube videos, and there's other avenues that you can listen to.
Yeah, it helps. It does. And you mentioned the meetings thing, and that's great. Go to meetings. I was talking at the treatment center the other day, and this guy was telling me about, he needs to just calm it down and not work 40 hours. He needs to work 30 hours a week, and he doesn't need to hit 90 and 90. He needs to hit 2 a week, but they need to be 2 good ones. And I told him that's perfect, though, because I've seen so many times people are like, I'm doing 90 and 90. Hey, if you want to do 90 and 90, do 90 and 90, whatever works for you. But myself, I tried 90 and 90, got to like 50. I missed one, was like, whatever. It was another excuse for me, and that's just me. But going into meetings that you hate, in my opinion, you're not going to get anything out of it. And I've heard people say, oh, I've never heard of a bad meeting. That sounds good. That's like saying I never got a bad Christmas present. Yeah, you have. Never got a bad birthday present. Yeah, you have. You don't have to lie about that. I've never had bad sex. Well, I'm just saying, I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm just saying, like, there are meetings where you are uncomfortable or something. It's just maybe you don't like the room. Maybe it smells funny. I don't know. Maybe you don't like the people there. That happens. But if you're not getting something out of that meeting, if you can't open up and share something or at least listen, and get something, if you're just going into it, this is going to suck, it's going to suck.
Well, when you look at it, just because we're type A personalities, we get into a program, it's not like we're immediately going to change and become AA personalities. If we're saying yes to something, more likely we're saying no to something else. I think the challenge on a daily basis is a message that just don't say no to your recovery today. You know what works and you know what doesn't work. Let's not do that. And in the meantime, maybe that some of the stuff that's being offered at UFAM, like music therapy, art therapy, aromatherapy, massage, relaxation, you can kind of open a window to your recovery that maybe you weren't exposed to, and then find out something that, hey, I can use this. This is a spiritual tool.
And whatever works for you might work. Like I swear I've said, like, I use podcast therapy.
Yeah, podcast therapy.
And there are some times where I'm feeling it, and I'm like, man, I need to go do a podcast, and it really does help me get it off my chest. It helps me talk out loud about it, and it helps, So yeah, this is a way for me, to do recovery, is doing a podcast, and it's something that's worked. But AA opens the door for people, like when you're first going through it, people, go to AA, So okay, that's a good place to start. If that's not you, don't give up there, and don't be. And I was so close-minded, I would say, no, I don't like AA. I had never even been to AA. I might have seen it on movies or something. Nah, that's not for me. That's a cult, I used to say. And it's like, come on, man, give it a try. And then finally, as deeper and deeper you sink, okay, I'll try a little AA, but you don't want to go all the way with it because you still think your way is going to work. At least that's how I was. And then you start finding yourself like, oh wait, and like you said, there's music therapy, there's art therapy, walk your dog therapy, there's podcast therapy now I just mentioned. There's so many different things, and why stop at AA? I'm not saying that AA is bad. I'm not saying, that it's great. I'm just saying there's so many other options out there. So that to have the excuse of, I don't like it, I'm not going to do it, it's not really an excuse anymore.
Well, I think a lot of times, people in recovery, they're basically wired as multitaskers, and you're going to find yourself where you're taking a walk, you're taking a job, you're going to the gym, you're going to be on the lawnmower, you're going to be riding down the road, going to your next appointment, and, what you're doing with 217, you're filling the gap that is existing for people where they get a chance to get exposed to all sorts of different messages. And as long as that message is built in recovery where, hey, the drugs and alcohol are not working for you, let's go ahead and try something different. And a lot of times from a cultural perspective, we can go ahead and do that from a tribal nation part and, give a teaching, kind of like I did with the 7 grandfather teachings. Humility is not a bad teaching to embrace, and if you're just going to go ahead and say podcasts not for me, all well and good, but have you actually tried it? Have you actually listened to what's out there?
Yeah, until you listen to it and try it. I've turned on some, and there's this one, and I love her to death. Her name is Pastor Deb, and she's out of Chicago, but then she moved to Atlanta, but then she came back. But the first time I heard her, it was like, and I'm not, and she knows, we've talked about this before. I'm not trying to say anything bad about her, but she, like, I was in radio for 20 years. She wasn't, and I got that vibe right when you start listening. But her messages, the stuff that she was saying, I could tell, A, that she believed in it, and she was 100% behind it, and just having that realness to it was something that attracted me to it, and so just by having that, you don't have to have this golden voice, you don't have to have all this knowledge, you don't have to have $300 microphones, like podcasting is so easy now. It might cost you a few dollars here and there. And when we started, I started with $30 microphones. I think this actually is a $30 microphone I'm talking to you right now. But like, you can do things like that. And I was always afraid to until I took that leap. There's a book by Steve Harvey. It's called Jump, where he talks about that. He's like, you gotta jump, and then you gotta just have faith that your God's gonna be there to catch you. Whatever you believe in, you got to have faith that whatever you're going to do, you got to jump. You got to try it, and if you don't, you're always going to sit there wondering, what if, should have, could have, would have, So when I did jump, I was like, F it, I'm going to be out. I'm going to be in recovery, and that's what it is. And I felt so free, like trying to hide it from everybody for so long. Oh, I don't want them to know I'm an alcoholic, and I don't like that term. And I'm in recovery. To me, that's more positive. But yeah, to call myself an alcoholic and a bad person and all that, I'm over that. I'm a different person than I was 5 years ago, and I'm doing everything I can to help other people now. So
Well, there will come a time in somebody's life where adult supervision comes on in. And for me, it was a tribal elder. And basically in a fasting teaching, he shared after a lodge that we did that we're spiritual beings having a human experience. We're no greater than, we're no less than, we're all a child of the Creator, and we're here for a purpose. And he basically gave me this idea that, hey, drugs and alcohol, that purpose is not serving you well. You might want to look at doing something different. And that's where the embrace of culture came in. And for someone that's 75% Ojibwe and 1/4 Irish, I was embracing the Irish side a lot more, but it was one of those deals where, how do you go ahead and to come to terms with something that you're not really exposed to? And this is coming from a res kid, born and raised on the reservation, but didn't practice the traditional beliefs. And now I find the value in it. And I know there's somebody out there that's going ahead and listening to your podcast, and they're going ahead and say, well, they're talking about recovery, but I'm still having my challenges. And it's like, well, maybe that grandfather humility, there's something about it. Can you keep an open mind and continue to go ahead and to stay in the game? Because if you check out, there's too much of that going on, and that's why they did the honors song. A lot of people checking out nowadays. I don't know what you've seen, around your community, but it gets kind of disheartening.
I just wish we could trust in the next generation enough to know that they're smarter than us. That's what I want. That's what I want. Instead of like having these billboards across town that are like, don't drink and drive, don't vape. How about thank you? Thank you for being smart enough not to go down my path, not to use drugs, Like, how about we start putting it in their mind, like, thanking them, like, already telling them that they're smarter than us, by not doing drugs. And, of course, they might be 6 years old, but you know what? They're still not using drugs. So that's smart, and kind of frame it in a different way, because when people told me not to do stuff, I always did it, because why not? And then when I would do that stuff, I realized, like, oh, I'm not dead. They said that was going to kill me, and I'd always try something else. And, well, that didn't kill me. But the drugs they have nowadays, you can't afford to mess with that. Like, oh, I'll just smoke a little meth. Well, you don't even know it's meth anymore, and hey, you shouldn't smoke meth, because that is something that you really, that's a tough one, just don't even try that one. But that was my thing, like, oh, I'll try that because I tried cocaine, I tried all these other drugs, I've tried acid, none of that killed me, so what is this different? And then I tried that, and I was like, oh my God, treatment immediately. Like, well,
addicted to more kills a lot of people.
Yeah.
But the beauty part that I see in your career, Corey, is you're kind of like a technocrat, and you're embracing technology. And can you imagine what recovery would have looked like if we would have all phoned it in during COVID and just fell on the sword? And, hey, I've been to those meetings, too, and there was a lot of people that fell on the sword. It was a disconnection, and what am I going to do without, that connection? And then we find out that, you were still kicking it with the podcast. You were still bringing that message of recovery out there. And I think, the founders of recovery would look at that and say, look at what they're doing with technology. We're finding different ways to deliver the message, and podcasts are a big part of it.
Yeah, and some people say, "Oh, we need to do more videos and stuff," like that, but we just don't have time. And like that's another thing, like being real with yourself and knowing what your limits are. Because I could push myself even more than I do now, but then I'd be spent at the end of the day. And if that gets me a little closer to a drink or a drug, I don't want to do it. So know your limits with yourself. If you want to start a podcast, whatever you want to do for your own recovery, do that, but just know your limits. Kind of like that guy earlier I was talking about at the treatment center, that he was like, look, I'm cutting back to 30 hours a week. I'm going to hit 2 meetings that I love every single, that's planning yourself out for some successful recovery, early on, in my opinion. But yeah, you got to have a little fun with it though, for sure.
Well, I still believe that when you're with your family, you are working a program of recovery, because there was a time when my family didn't want me around. I kind of look at that where I got to make the main thing the main thing. Yeah. And whatever that looks like, to go ahead and to embrace recovery. And for me, I've always been a morning person. Carpe AM, seize the morning, and recovery doesn't start at the crack of noon. And a lot of times, you got to go ahead and get busy. What's important to you today? And I think there's a lot of people that would agree that like, hey, I'm going to put my recovery first, and that's going to be a driver of everything else that I do. And as long as I do that, my life's going to go, a lot better than where it was.
But it's hard sometimes for people to sacrifice that because they look at it like at first like a sacrifice. Like, I can't put my recovery above my job. I had a guy tell me that a couple weeks ago, and I said, all right, man, like, hit me up later, because you'll be hitting me up later. And because I asked him, like, what are you doing? And he's, oh, well, I'm doing this and that. And I was like, oh, well, come. We opened a 217 Recovery Center where people can come and do their own meetings and whatever they want, And I was like, well, come do your stuff, during the day. Come. Oh, I can't. I'm working. I was like, working? I was like, thought you said you had to, like, blow and do all this other stuff for courts. I said, oh, I do, but I have a breathalyzer thing. I was like, what do you do? My work won't let me off. Well, what do you do when you need to go to court? Oh, they let me off. Wait, you just said that you were so important at this job that you can't leave for 1 hour a day. That's a red flag. And he's like, no, I can't, man. I can't. My job's more important. Then he said that sobriety's cool, bro, but sobriety doesn't pay the bills. And I said, oh, that's when I was like, all right, dude, like, hit me up, man. Don't go too far, like, you'll call me one day. I mean, trust me, that doesn't work out that way, When you start putting other things above your sobriety.
See, I kind of look at that as the gladiator moment, and the only reason I know that is because I lived it, and I was that guy. There's a couple ways to look at the sword. I can pick up the sword, and I can fight. I can lay down the sword and give up, or I can pretend to lay down the sword. And I've lived a lot of my years on pretending to go ahead and to lay down that sword. And a lot of that idea, you hear it from the people that have been in recovery for a few 24 hours. They talk about the importance of surrender. Yeah. And somewhere along the line, like, man, time to change and get with the program. Yeah.
And thinking that, oh, I'll do it for because if I'm on probation for 3 years, I'll do it for 3 years. But that's going to be 3 years. I look back at something like that and think that's going to be 3 years. He's going to be kicking himself one day because he's going to feel like he wasted it. Not that that's. I mean, there's a difference between being sober and being in recovery, in my opinion, and just not drinking so you don't go to jail, or maybe learning how to. Oh, I can have 2 beers at this time because by the time I blow on Friday at 10 o'clock in the morning, I'll be good, and if not, then I'll tell them I took a little mouthwash, and then I'll know next time, they'll have some kind of lie already lined up, Oh, I had a little NyQuil, man. Sorry, I didn't know. Of course, we know what's in everything, man. Like, don't ever use that one ever again. If you're somebody new and you're like, oh, I'll just tell them I drink NyQuil. Stop it. Stop. Oh, I'll just tell them I didn't know there was out. Shut up. Just don't use that one anymore. That's old.
Speaking from the guy that used to drink vanilla extract in a pinch just to stop from shaking, it's one of those deals. Every time I come to Lansing, though, you got this nice place called Potter Park. And I remember this one guy telling me, Joe, just because you go ahead and pay admission to go see the Potter Park animals, it doesn't give you permission to throw rocks at them. So some part of this is personal responsibility, and I know even with years of recovery behind me, the monkey's off my back, but the circus is still in town. Yeah. And it can happen in a lot of different ways. But I'm glad that we got you and your crew from 217, continuing to get this message out and using technology in the best way possible. So, kudos on that, bro. And, keep up the good work on that.
Well, thanks, Joseph, for stopping by. And we'll see you next year.
Oh, there's a good feeling that comes together, and one of the things we talk from a traditional standpoint is we all get a chance to be a part of the circle. And I still haven't been to that meeting where they say that, like, well, we don't have room for another person. I haven't seen that happen. So there's always room for one more in your recovery, and who knows, that might be the guy that you can go ahead and to help out today. And, we got to look for those opportunities.
Yep. But we can't do it for them.
No, we can't do it for them. And that's one of those things for our sister program, Al-Anon. Sometimes we can want it, more than they want it themselves. And, we just got to be that voice that, hey, stick and pitch, man.
Yep. Well, Joseph, thanks for stopping by, man. And, yeah, we'll see you next year because we'll be here, and I'm sure you will be as well.
Yep, keep it on the reels, bro.
All right, man.
More from the 2023 UFAM Rally coming up on the 217 Recovery Podcast.